Hey everybody out there on the interwebs, I'm Mr. Spork and these are Mr. Spork's Hands. Today I'm coming to you from the Clever Kitchen Innovation and Savings Division here at Spork Industrial Magic, and what I want to show you how to do is refill one of these SodaStream CO2 cartridges. Very handy device to have at home, makes great seltzer and flavored sodas if you know how to make the syrup. Maybe I'll do a video on that someday soon. But they can be kind of expensive to do the exchange. It's about 15, maybe 20 bucks, depending on where you live, to do an exchange. I can do that with a refill and dry ice for about $3, about a pound of dry ice. A little bit less goes in here, but you want to buy a little bit of extra because you're going to lose some on the drive home. Let me show you what else you're going to need for this project. Safety first, you've got to have some gloves. You're not going to impress anybody with frozen fingertips, and it's not going to look pretty, so find yourself some decent gloves. I use these rubberized tipped versions. They seem to work fine. I also happen to be wearing safety glasses, but you can't see that because hands don't wear glasses. You're going to need a funnel. This bottom opening is 9/16 of an inch wide, and it's got about a 1.5 inch long stem. And I like that long stem because that way it'll sit all the way down in, and there's no chance of it wobbling out while you're filling it with CO2, which would be a bit of a CO2 disaster. You're going to want a good healthy sized crescent wrench. This is an adjustable one because we've got to be able to get at two different size nuts. We want to get at this safety check valve here, which is going to let the surplus gas out before you start. And then we've got to get it around the neck of the actual valve here, because that's how you loosen the whole thing and get it out so that you can put the funnel in and, of course, refill it with the dry ice. The other thing, and this is important, get yourself a good scale. This is a digital scale. It's accurate to 2 grams. And make sure that you check that it's in calibration with some known weights. The trouble isn't so much underfilling as it is overfilling. If you put more CO2 in these tanks than they're rated for, you can create potentially a dangerous situation. Here's how you tell how much you're going to use. Of course, the manufacturer says this is a 60-liter cartridge, meaning it can make 60 liters of soda. In practice, I've found that it really only makes more like 50 liters, but that's beside the point. This number really doesn't mean anything. What you want to do is look down at the bottom, and you'll see that it's rated for a weight. And in this case, that's 410 grams or 14.5 ounces for you down in America. That is the weight of the CO2, or in our case, the weight of the dry ice that we're going to put into this bottle, and we're not going to exceed that rating. So whatever your bottle says, that's the number you go by. Today we're just going to use 410 grams as our target fill, and we will be well and safe in that approach. The other two things, a little chopstick is handy just so that you can get it down into the funnel, and a scoop. And I like to use a pretty hefty metal one because sometimes you gotta bash this dry ice up a little bit to get it to flow a little bit freer. And you'll notice that I'm using this pelletized version, which can be found in just about any town that has construction or road work, because they're both used in those, both of those industries use this stuff. As opposed to the old-fashioned bricks, which you got to bash and beat, and it's just not worth the trouble. I suggest you make a few calls and find this pelletized stuff instead of the bricks that you might be able to get at the grocery store. All right, so that's our inventory. We'll be right back with how to do the refill. Okay, so before we get into the SodaStream refill, the first thing we've got to do is get the old soda cartridge ready to be refilled. And this is the standard 60-liter carbonator. There are other sizes, I'm sure, but I believe the valve is the same in all of them. So it should be the same no matter what size cartridge you're using. You need to get yourself a crescent wrench. I like to get a reasonable heft to mine, because opening this valve the first time is going to be a little bit stiff. They cinch them down pretty tight at the factory, so get yourself a good hefty crescent wrench. So the valve is the main valve that's in the body of the tank needs to come out, but before we touch anything, we want to make sure and open this little safety check valve. Even if your SodaStream cartridge is empty, in that it's not making soda for you anymore, there's probably still just a little bit of CO2 left inside the tank. So cinch your crescent down onto the little valve and give it a quick little turn. Shouldn't be that hard, and you'll probably hear some hissing. In this case, I've done them before, so there isn't, but you want to unscrew that until you hear the hissing and it completely stops. That means that your tank is truly fully empty, and that's when you're safe to go ahead and take out the main valve. So get your nice healthy sized crescent wrench onto the main valve and cinch it up. And now we want to unscrew it just like regular right-hand threads. And to do that, you're probably going to need to give it a little bit of a wrap. Now, you don't have to wail on this thing. You don't have to hit it like crazy. Just good, solid taps. And it might take quite a few. It might take you a little bit of fighting with it, but you will get it off without having to pound on the thing. So work on that. And once you get it loose enough, you can get your crescent off. And then you can unscrew it by hand all the way. And just two things to notice. There is a little tiny hole in the threads. That's a safety feature so that as you're putting it in, gas can escape if there is any gas left. It's basically for idiots that don't do the valve properly. And you'll also notice there's this little black rubber gasket. You want to make sure that that rubber gasket's in good shape. It's not cut or beat up or otherwise deteriorating. And if it is, please go to the hardware store and get yourself a little 20-cent replacement. Take the old one in. They can find a match for it. I bet you could probably even find them online if you really had to. 20 cents, and it will make sure that your CO2 doesn't leak out and you don't have a lot of frustration with this process. So once that valve is out, that seal's in good shape, the check valves are open, this is ready to be refilled. That'll be our next step. Okay, Spork fans, we're back and we're ready to do the actual filling on the SodaStream cartridge. First thing I'm going to do is put my funnel into the top opening of the cylinder where we've removed the valve earlier, so the valve is out. And then I'm going to put it on my scale and get into the units of measure I prefer. In this case I'm using grams, and I'm going to zero it out so that we have the weight of the bottle in the funnel accounted for in the process, right? So now it's just a matter of scooping our dry ice and getting it into the funnel. I like to do this off the scale and just check every so often. The reason for that is that the bottom is going to start to get really cold really quick. I don't want it freezing to the top of my scale, but rest assured I will come back and check that on a regular basis. So the first scoop, put it in nice and slow. The main thing is to try not to clog up the bottom, but invariably it's going to clog up a little bit. When it does, that's when you get your super tool Chinese chopstick. Work it down through the hole until it's all through. And so there, that one scoop, just do a quick check. That was about 75 grams and we're aiming for 410. So I'm going to do a few more scoops just like I did then, and I will be back to show you how to close these up once you've got it all in there. Okay, so we're right at the end of our 410 grams, 14.5 ounces for the Americans, worth of pelletized dry ice into the container. Just going to do a final weight check. We're 404 grams, so we're just shy of that. That's fine. Take the funnel out, and we want to get the valve, again with that black rubber gasket, we want to get that valve back in there in relatively short order. And you can even hear the gas is already starting to build up and escape. So we got to get that tightened down pretty quick and make sure that our check valve is also hand tight. Okay, so I'm just going to grab my wrench now and snug those up just comfortably tight. We don't want to really torque on this thing, but we want to give it a good snug turn. And we also want to make sure that our little safety check valve is, again, just comfortably snugged up. Don't torque on that too much because that brass can strip out pretty easily if you try to put too much pressure on it, but comfortably snug. So now you can see this thing has already kind of super chilled itself. I wouldn't be able to handle this without the gloves right now. I'm going to set this aside on something safe, piece of cardboard or plastic, in a plastic bucket somewhere, just away from kids and pets and things like that, so that it has time to return to room temperature, in which case the solid CO2 that we put in here will turn back into a liquid and we'll be ready to make soda. Okay, Spork Nuts, as you can see, we are back after a few hours and our SodaStream cartridges have come back up to temperature. I just left them parked in the sink that catches all the frost and condensate that accumulates on the outside of them. But after about 3 hours, they are back to a temperature that you can handle without safety gloves on. After that, it's really just like you would replace the cartridge in any other instance. You basically open up the back of the unit, you screw the tank into the SodaStream unit itself. Don't over tighten, because that plastic to metal connection isn't the strongest. Just be a little bit gentle there. Put your cover back on, and just to show you that we are doing what we're supposed to do, put my little half-liter bottle in there, and sure enough, we're making soda again. It's just that easy. I hope you got something out of the video here. This is my first one, so if you liked it, give me a little bit of love down in the comments section. And also down there, I'm going to put up a spreadsheet that I made, which talks a little bit more about the real numbers that you get out of these tanks. I don't ever get 60 liters, I get more like 50. There's a lot of other factors like the cost of sugar in your area if you're making your own syrup, the number of bottles you drink a day, whether or not your water costs you anything. I try to put in a whole lot of factors that a lot of people kind of skip when they're doing the math on these, and so feel free to play around with that spreadsheet and stick in your own numbers. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to go have a seltzer and sit down in the Spork Relaxatron 5000. That's all from Spork Labs this time. We'll see you soon. Cheers.